Hey, it's Will from Your Career Mastery, and today we're going to be talking about the top resume mistakes that people make and how you can fix them. So they're the top mistakes, but they're also the biggest opportunities that if you can fix these on your resume, you'll really put yourself in a good position to stand out from the other people competing with you for that role. So the first one is the key selection criteria. So essentially what this means is for every single job you go for, there's going to be a unique set of requirements or criteria that employer is looking for, that recruiter is looking for when they're hiring for that role. So it's super important with your resume that you address this key selection criteria. And there's another really cool hack or really important thing to be aware of when it comes to the key selection criteria, and that is around keywords. So if you're looking to apply for jobs on job websites, whether it be LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Monster, there's a site that's really popular in Australia called Seek. Essentially, recruiters have software that will scan resumes for the keywords in the key selection criteria. So what that means is, let's say you're applying for a role as a software engineer, and it might have in the key selection criteria a requirement that you are proficient in software coding or managing a team. Now, if you don't, in your resume, address those specific keywords around managing a team and software coding, automatically, by not having those keywords, the software could automatically exclude you from being even considered as an applicant for that role. So it's really important to be aware of that. More and more companies are using this keyword scanning software that is, like I said, taking the keywords mentioned in the key selection criteria and looking to match them up against your resume. And if they're not in there, then automatically you're disqualified from moving forward in that application process. You could be a great fit for the role, but if you don't have those keywords in there, the software is not going to make a value judgment. It's just going to see other keywords there, and if they're not, then it's going to wipe your resume out. So you want to put your best foot forward for every single job. You want to address the key selection criteria. Now, resume mistake number 2 is not customizing your resume for every single job you're going for. And this links back to the point around the key selection criteria, because every single job is going to be different. Every single job application is going to be different, and therefore you need to customize your resume for every single individual application. I know it might sound like a lot of work if you're unemployed at the moment and you're really just trying to send resumes out there to try and catch some job interviews. You really are not putting your best foot forward if you don't customize your resume for every single job app you go for. So what I mean by customize it is I mean customizing how you address the key selection criteria in each of your resume applications. So let's say you're going for a job as a blogger at some company, like a marketing role. Even though you might be applying for many blogging positions, and they might all be similar, they might all have very similar requirements or criteria. However, there will be nuances. One job might ask for, do you have team building experience? Another application may say, do you have experience working with legal teams and compliance teams to cross-check your content? Now, that's where you really need to customize it and say every role is going to be different. What nuances is this job ad asking for? How can I incorporate that into my resume by addressing the key selection criteria in a way that's customized, but more importantly, in a way that is relevant for the job you're going for. So when a job, a hiring manager or recruiter is looking at a resume, they're not just looking to see if your qualifications stack up for the role, they're looking to see if what you've got on your resume is actually relevant for what they're looking for. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. If you are a recruiter or a hiring manager, you could be looking at hundreds of resumes. You're trying to sift through quickly to find what job ad or what applicants look qualified. Do they look attractive based on their skills and experience, but also just relevant for the role? Because again, if you don't have the keywords in your resume, you might automatically be excluded from the application process because the software wiped you out, the keyword scanning software. But also, if your resume is just not relevant for what they're looking for, or if it's not written in a way that seems relevant for that job ad, then you might automatically be excluded too. Again, even if you are highly qualified and relevant, it's all just about making sure your resume communicates that to the recruiter or to the hiring manager. So key selection criteria incredibly important to address that in your resume, and also incredibly important to customize your resume for every single job ad to ensure that you are addressing the key selection criteria. You've got those keywords in there, and also making sure your resume is relevant for the job ad that you're going for. And the last point is around achievements. And this was a mistake that I made back in the day. And that was just really listing out in my resume all the things I did in my job. And in some of my earlier jobs, I was really busy. So I had a lot of things to flesh out in my resume, look at all the great things I did on a day-to-day basis or on a yearly basis, whether it's strategy or proofreading and editing. For context, I work as a content manager in my current role. So a lot of things about my day-to-day were, search engine optimization and looking at Google and understanding the strategy of trying to rank on Google, proofreading content, working with legal teams, working with compliance teams. All that stuff is great and all of it needs to be in there, but more importantly is listing all the achievements in your role. So not just what you did on a day-to-day basis, but what you achieved. What was your impact in the business? And it's really important to show this because it shows that you are effective. It shows that you're impactful in your role, meaning you can get things done, you can drive results, but it also shows that you're accountable. So, you might have specific figures, whether it be, look, I drove an improvement in revenue by X%, or I drove an increase in new clients by X%. That shows that you're accountable to numbers, and it shows that you are reliable and trustworthy, and you hold yourself to a measurable standard, which is really important for any applicant to show. I not just worked in an organization and I did things, but I made things happen. I drove results. I drove growth, or I drove profitability, or I drove efficiency. So that might be, and just to list out some examples of achievements, you might say I drove, and forgive my terrible handwriting, you drove increased profit. So that's profit plus. Increased profit for a business. You drove increased sales. Maybe you increased, I'm thinking from a marketing perspective, right? Because I work in marketing. You increased brand awareness. You get the picture. So to show that you drove results, but not just to say profitability or sales, but give a number to it, by 10%. Increased brand awareness by 20%. Decreased costs in the business by improving efficiencies and processes that save the business $10 million. I mean, that's a big number, but hey, if you could do that, you'd probably get a job anywhere, to be honest. But saying tangible achievements that you made in your role, putting figures behind them, even better, makes it seem more credible, more trustworthy. And when you get into your job interview further down the process, if your resume stacks up and you're relevant for the role and you stand out from the competition and you list all these great achievements, this already gives you ammunition and talking points when you come into your job interview to talk to these specific examples, so long as they are relevant for the job you're going for and not just a generic, templated resume that you send to every single job person out there that can absolutely read through that you haven't customized it, that you haven't put any effort in. And the fact that you haven't made your resume relevant, that also shows that you're not very accountable. It also kind of shows that you don't really care, or that you're not really interested in this job, because if you were invested in getting this job, then you'd take the time to make it relevant and customize it and address the key selection criteria. So it's not just doing these things, but it's also what doing these things says about you to the recruiter or the hiring manager. And again, just to loop back, why we do these things. So it makes sense from a practical perspective, but as we're sort of coming into the theoretical, doing all these things, and not just, it's not, having the key selection criteria addressed is not just going to help you with the keyword filters that the recruiters or the recruitment companies might use. It doesn't just make you relevant, but it also helps you stand out from the competition. Again, if a recruiter or hiring manager is looking at like 20 resumes, 20 is nothing. They're probably looking at 50 to 100. If it's a very, very competitive job, you need to stand out from the competition. Doing all of these things, specifically listing all these great achievements that you had in a previous role, that's going to help you stand out. Super, super, super important. And it's also just practically going to help you move through to the next stage. So the goal of the resume is to get you through to the next stage of the process. Running out of whiteboard space here, but essentially The goal of the resume, if I could spell resume, that'd be good, is to get you through to the next stage of the application process, which is the job interview. Now, that could be face-to-face, that could be via phone, that could be via Zoom, whatever, or Teams, whatever people are using these days, probably more commonly Teams, but I mean, Zoom's popular too, nothing against Zoom. The goal of the resume is to get you through the next stage of the process, that is the job interview. So we need to do all of these things right in order just to get through to the next stage of the process. So a bit to digest here, I know. Hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or feedback, please shoot them in the comments below and I'd love to get back to you. And if there's any burning questions, we'll do a subsequent video just to flesh it out in more detail. But again, if you found this content helpful, please like the video or hit subscribe or do both. And I'll be putting out videos every single week around resumes, job interview questions, really just trying to help you find your dream job. So make sure you follow this channel if that's what you're interested in. And I'll see you in another video soon. Thanks for your time today. Have a good day.